Hello, this is my Timelord deck profile. I like Timelords. Timelords are a pretty fun build. Essentially what you do is you just bring them out and they stay on the board for a while until your standby phase, and they just come back. They can't really be destroyed. You run 3 Time Maiden because Time Maiden is like the best card in the deck because it allows you to get a Time Lord to hand by tributing it, and also you can banish it from grave to special summon one out from your deck. Most Time Lords have all the same effects, starting with Median. They can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, and they get shuffled into the deck during the standby phase. Median returns monsters to the deck if it attacks, and it deals 300 damage per monster that it sends. Lazian. Whenever you use Lazian, if your opponent draws a card, once per turn they'll take 1,000 burn damage. It's a good card just to deal a little bit of damage. Mikian, you run at 3 because Mikian, it'll half your opponent's life points if you attack, and halving your opponent's life points is a lot of damage, especially towards the beginning of a game. Sandian is really good. I run him at 2 because if you run him at 3, sometimes it won't work all the time. He's a 4,000 attack, 4,000 defense. Your opponent takes no battle damage when you attack with him, but if you do, they'll take 2,000 damage. Camion, it's a good Time Lord. It's a good return for anything. Essentially, if you attack, you can target a card and return it for 500 points of damage. You run 2 Zaphion. Zaphion returns spell and trap cards that your opponent controls, and yeah. You run 1 Raphion because whenever you summon Raphion, if you attack with him, then your opponent loses like attack equal to one of their monsters. If you run more than one though, and say they don't have a big monster out, then it's kind of just it's not too good of a card. You run 1 Sadion because whenever you summon Sadion, if your life points are below 4,000, you can just attack with him and make them 4,000 again. Gabrion is pretty good. I only run him at 1 because they get to draw cards because it returns as many as they have on the field whenever you attack. This guy you run at 1 because you mainly only get him out just a couple times, and he doesn't help too much compared to some of the other ones. Essentially what Halion does is if your life points are lower than your opponent's, it'll inflict damage to make it equal to yours, so your opponent will take as much damage until they're equal to you. Next you run 2 Advanced Draw. Advanced Draw is a good card, especially if you use something like Time Maiden. Essentially, you'll draw 2 cards, and you can like banish Time Maiden again and get another Time Lord, and you just get a +2 from it. You can use Celestial Transformation. You use it at 3 because 2 it's not enough, and yeah, it's just better at 3 because then you can summon more Time Lords, and I mean they'll die, so some effects need them, kind of like the Empty Machine, Infinite Machine, and the Empty Machine, Infinite Machine, and the Infinite Light, which is like the trap cards of the deck that are really good. You go for 1 for 1 because you can, because Time Maiden's really good. Time Maiden essentially makes the deck go around. It's kind of the searcher for everything, so it's kind of good. So if you like have that in your opening hand, you're good for like 2 turns if you don't have any more in your hand. You run 3 Dark Hole. Because basically what happens with Dark Hole is, since they can't be destroyed by card effects, it's essentially like Raigeki. You run 1 Raigeki because it's Raigeki, you just run it. You go for 3 Torrential Tribute because like it's kind of like the Dark Hole again. You summon it, it can't be destroyed by card effects, and you just kind of blow up the board. You run 3 Empty Machine. Empty Machine, you don't use its first effect of discarding a level 10 monster and drawing a card. You mainly use the second one that shuffles a monster from your, what do you call it, graveyard, and then you just kind of put it in the deck, and then you put Infinite Machine out. Infinite Machine, you only run 1 of it because you have to get rid of Empty Machine in order to bring it out. And Infinite Machine is kind of the same. Its first effect is during the main phase, you can special summon 1 Time Lord from your hand, which is good, but the second effect is what you want because you want to get into Infinite Light as soon as possible. Its second effect, which you want to use, is you can target 1 Time Lord monster in your graveyard. It's the same as the last one. Shuffle it into the deck. Then you can set 1 Infinite Light directly from your deck or hand. Basically, you'll just use Infinite Light to special summon out 1 Time Lord from your hand, deck, and graveyard. that's what this one does, and it makes it to where Time Lords can't be targeted by stuff, and it makes it to where this card can't die at all, so it kind of helps a lot. Time Lords don't really need an extra deck, but if you had to run a couple cards, I'd definitely say Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Gustav Max is the better one of probably any of the ones you can use. It has a once per turn where you can detach material and do 2,000 damage, and this deck is all about burn damage, so 2,000 damage is really good if you're just trying to have that little bit more of an edge left. Time Lords, basically, they just kind of sit on the field for a while, and they just kind of slowly kill your opponent at a time, and it makes a lot of fun for you. It may not be a lot of fun for your opponent, but the deck is pretty consistent because it's mainly monsters that can't be destroyed, so it's pretty good to use for mainly just kind of casual play, but it's pretty good for tournament play as well. So, yeah, that's my Time Lord profile. You don't run Cephalion in the deck. It's the other level 10 Time Lord that takes 10 monsters in grave, and since Time Lords mainly return themselves from the field to the deck, you don't want to run Cephalion because you basically don't use him at